You are someone who operates at the intersection of trauma, relationships. Give me your thoughts on the Jonah Hill situation.
Guys, I don't know how much you've been following the Jonah Hill situation with his text messages that he apparently sent like 2 years ago to his girlfriend at the time, who's like some surfer chick or something. I don't know, model. I don't know what the hell, but she surfs. And she basically posted it online and essentially was saying like, hey, he was abusive to me. He's controlling, etc. Look how he's being such a dick, essentially. And she kind of did it like 2 years later at a weird time. And like he literally just had a kid with his current girlfriend, or they married. Actually, I think they might be married with his current wife, I guess. And it's just weird. The whole thing is weird. Okay, let's watch this video and we're going to walk through it and then we'll discuss.
Right. So I'm all about boundaries. I'm a very big advocate of having boundaries, and I think it's something particularly men need to exercise in order to maintain their masculinity and their dominance in some regards of the relationships. Not in every regard, but in some leadership skills, you need boundaries. We need boundaries with everybody in our lives. There's nothing unhealthy about having boundaries. But here's the problem that not just Jonah, a lot of men have. And this particularly happens amongst men with low self-esteem. So this is why you'll see men who have really low self-esteem. What happens is in the beginning stages of relationships, they're afraid to effectively communicate what they expect in a partner. They're so in awe of their partner and they're just so excited to have a partner that they forget their own standards of what is acceptable and unacceptable behavior. So they go into the relationship recognizing that this woman may have certain characteristics that they won't be comfortable with in the long run. But because their low self-esteem and their ego is craving attention and love, they ignore their boundaries. But boundaries always, just like when you eat badly and you eat something unhealthy, it catches up on your body. When you have unhealthy boundaries, it catches up on your emotional connections. And eventually what happens is a person, as they get more and more attached, the boundaries start screaming at them. The things that they ignored, the red flags that they ignored and not comfortable with, start screaming at them. And then they explode. And as a result, it does come across as controlling behavior. What I found so interesting is the internet was so divided. There was all these men being like, yeah, come on, set boundaries. This is what modern women are like. Here's what modern men are like. They take women that they're so excited about and so in awe of, ignore all of the red flags, and they beg her to abide by their boundaries. So you'll see men dating girls who have like OnlyFans or the Instagram pictures of bikinis. They're begging these girls to take them on a date or begging these girls to be with them. The moment they get into a relationship, then they want to exercise boundaries. It's too late. You signed an imaginary contract the day you invested in each other, that you accept each other for who they are. Now that your insecurities are creeping in, you don't have the right to now undo the damage that you set the foundations for, is what I was thinking. What were you thinking, Chris? I'm actually really interested to know what you think about this situation.
If only my name was Chris right now. She said a couple things that's just interesting, right? I have 100% at a point in my life, or different parts of my life, I guess depending on my state of self-confidence or emotional confidence or how I feel about myself or whatever, I have dated a girl who I was like, I would never accept this type of thing from her, like these flags or things that she's doing or things that she's requesting of me, per se. I would never accept them, but yet I'm like, oh my God, somebody's actually paying attention to me. Someone likes me, someone whatever. And I was just craving the intimate connection with a woman, right? That, and it's not even just intimate, it's like emotional connection, right? Like it's the connection of a relationship. I was craving that I accepted it. On the flip side, I have completely been the opposite at different points in my life where I saw, I'll give a great example. There was this woman that I was talking to for a couple of months, very attractive woman, and we were kind of getting a little serious, and she's like, hey, just let you know that, if we're going to take this to the next level, I want to be able to have an open relationship. That's what she was talking about. And I was like, immediately, no. Like, that's just not going to happen. I thought about it, and I was like, you know what? That's not going to work for me. Like, I would not want to accept that. I don't remember the reasons I gave at the time, but essentially it wasn't something that I'm into. So I let her know that, and she was like, "Oh, well, it's something that I need." And I was like, "Hey, cool." Then I just walk away, and that's exactly what happened. I just after that stopped talking to her. A few weeks later, she's still messaging me, trying to like be like, "Hey, actually, I kind of maybe I can reconsider this." And I'm like, "You know what? No, don't reconsider it. That's something that you want in your life. I don't want you like regretting your life and then later coming down the road and be like, hey, actually, I do want this, or I don't want, I want to change this, whatever. You were very adamant. That's what you wanted before. And now that I've stepped away and just be like, I'm good. Now you're chasing me." So just, I've definitely done that in different circumstances, but I've also done the exact opposite, which is what you first talked about. And then, she said something else here that's really important, is that Jonah Hill, in this case, should have identified all of these things in the beginning. He should have said, hey, here's what's acceptable and here what isn't, or here's how I foresee us proceeding with our relationship. They should have had those discussions. Maybe not the first date, maybe not the second date, but like in the first few months of dating, right? You have those discussions and you work it out. And had they done that, this wouldn't have happened or shouldn't have happened. And if it did happen, his answer would be like, hey, we agreed, you wouldn't do that. And now you're doing this. And that was like one of our things that we agreed to. And broken the rule or whatever, like you broken the boundary in the relationship, etc. So, okay, you either have to stop or we separate, whatever.
I actually don't know what you think.
Yeah. So I think, first off, the internet's response is way more interesting than the actual situation, because it really does. It's like that image of the dress where some people saw black and blue and some people saw gold and green or something.
Yeah.
People are seeing very different scenarios here. From my side, I think your assessment's really accurate, which is setting boundaries and having these sorts of concerns or limitations around a relationship are broadly acceptable. The difference is if you establish a routine and you allow somebody to become attached with one particular set of rules, and then over time, as your feelings for them get involved, and you have to, you're right, it's almost like the boundaries are very difficult for you to ignore because of how much you care about the other person. And, Jonah Hill has had a glow up. I mean, he's a very different looking dude now as a skinny guy compared with as a really, really fat guy. But he's risen in status a lot over the last sort of 10 to 15 years. Definitely wouldn't have had a lot of status as he was coming up. So self-esteem, I imagine, is going to be a massive problem for him. And I can completely see why he would feel insecure about these things. The problem is allowing a partner to get into a rhythm of a relationship. And this is what most guys that have been commenting on this, I think, have got right, which is it is completely within your rights to say, these are the things that I don't want my partner to do. Is it a bit cringe? Does it suggest that you've got low self-esteem? Does it suggest that you are maybe a little bit overly sensitive, that you could do with doing a little bit of self-work? All of these things, yes.
Yeah.
But by allowing yourself to get into a relationship, to establish a particular rhythm with them, and then to kind of do this switcheroo change, I don't know how long they'd been together, but it was quite a while. That, I think, that's what really causes a problem. Because this wouldn't have been a story if during the first 6 weeks of dating each other, Jonah Hill had said, look, these are the things that I feel uncomfortable about. How do you feel about this? What everybody is noticing is the change, the pivot in direction.
And chances are, if they had that conversation early, she would have said, well, I agree with you. I'm not the partner for you because I'm a surfing instructor. This is what I do for a living. I completely respect your boundaries. I will respect what you have to say, and then we can part ways. But to do it later on, when you finally got the confidence, is basically selling a false sense of yourself to your partner. And unfortunately, this is what a lot of men, when they have the glow up, and same with women, when they have the glow up, our self-esteem is pretty much established by the time we're 14, 15 years old. So your childhood experiences and your high school experiences tell you what your self-esteem are. So when you are 25, 30...
Your self-esteem is set when you're 14, 15 in your high school experiences. I don't know then if I'm an exception, but if that's the case, I should be just like sitting in the corner getting like picked on ridiculously and like having no friends. I don't know, because in my early teenage years, I was like, I had no friends. I was getting picked on all the time. It wasn't good. I was just an awkward kid and I was overweight. The end of my high school years, I started to kind of come into myself and actually talk and not just be a little quiet kid in the corner of the classroom. And then when I went to college university, that's actually when I really stepped out and I met a group of guys. Oh my God, I got into martial arts, karate and jiu-jitsu. I was doing that. I was doing a bunch of sports, so like squash and cycling, and then as well these group of guy friends, and asking girls out. And I completely changed, like completely changed. I was got into really good shape, felt super confident in myself because I could fight. It was a complete change, and I really became myself. And actually, my parents said when I came back from university that I was a cocky kid. My mom would call me cocky. She's like, "You're not confident, you're cocky." I was like, "Well, whatever." I don't know. So I would have been like, I took a year break, a gap year. So I would have been, I guess, 21, 22 when I graduated from 3 years. So I don't know if I agree with that. Maybe I'm an exception.
35, you might look great, but you're still that 14-year-old boy that can't believe you got this surfing model to have sex with you. So what happens is you let the thing slide, and then you realize that you're not.
Hold on. You've had sex with a bunch of these models or a bunch of these hot women or whatever. Do you not then feel differently about it? I think so. I think if you've had that experience a few times, you're like, well, shoot, obviously it's working. But if this was his first one, I could agree with that.
Not good enough because your core belief still sees you as that 14-year-old guy, and you think in order to feel like the relationship's more secure, you have to control it. To make everything feel more secure, you feel like micromanaging. But the reality is it's all down to the boundaries you accepted in the beginning. And doesn't mean that, okay, I understand people change and you might need to change up the parameters of your relationship, but you shouldn't be making ultimatums. Ultimatums nobody really respects, because truly most people who make ultimatums aren't really going to do anything if you don't abide by them. Ultimatums is a fear tactic. It's to scare your partner into submission.
Totally agree with this.
Whereas when you have kind of established that you will leave whenever the boundaries are crossed, you don't need to make ultimatums. You just watch their behavior. You let them know what you prefer, but you watch their behavior accordingly, and then you leave accordingly. But ultimatums,
you let them know what you'd prefer. No, I don't think it's a preference. I think it's a straight up like, if you do this, we're done. And then you leave.
Are almost a cry for help.
What do you think about the people saying that this is abuse?
On which part? Because
the messages, the restriction of, I don't want you to have photos of you in a bikini with your ass out. I don't want you to be surfing with guys. I don't want you to have friendships with people from your recent like wild past.
That is the dumbest take I've heard. If this is abuse, then we have all been severely abused our whole lives. It's not the right word, because we use abuse for like bigger things, like someone's a wife beater. You were abused, like the wife was abused, right? Abuse is not the right word. If anything, it's like controlling. That's not abusive per se, unless it's controlling to the facet where it's like, I'm gonna chain you to the post downstairs and you'll only be allowed to leave when I let you. Like, that would be abusive. But not saying, hey, don't go out, to the club, just go out for dinner or something with your girlfriends, or have girlfriends around you that are, I guess, not looking to meet up guys and have like good heads on their shoulders.
I would be very cautious of using the word abuse, even though I don't agree with Jonah. I think it is an extreme attempt to kind of vilify. He's actually what I see as a cry for help. When we have intense insecurities, it then manifests itself as controlling behavior. But that controlling behavior is a direct correlation to how attached they are to you and how inadequate they feel about the relationship, either because of how their self-esteem or how you've made them feel. So when we use the word abuse, I would be careful of using that, because abuse it signals that that person is doing it maliciously, consciously, and has been doing it throughout the relationship. But what this may have been is his insecurities got the best of him, and he lashed out in a way that it isn't appropriate. But I would be mindful of the word abuse. What do you think? Do you think it's abuse?
I would agree though that it does feel like it is an insecurity from his side. The fact that he'd be like, "Hey, I don't think these things, you should do them," and that's fine, I guess. Like, because we all have insecurities, you know. So I can understand it. You know, I can't fault him for having an insecurity, because we all have insecurities.
Abuse is a very, very strong term, and again, concept creep has managed to turn everything into racism, or everything into homophobia, or everything into bigotry, and everything into trauma and abuse. I'm not sure what the definition of it is. I think it's a shitty move by Jonah Hill, and I think that people who have low self-esteem do loads and loads of strange things that to them is just insecurity burbling inside of them, and like a volcano, it cracks out through a fissure, and if the pressure has built for a long time, then that can happen. I haven't watched it, but that Stutz Netflix documentary, which I think is between Jonah and his therapist, shows that Jonah has been doing a good bit of self-work. But if there's
a Netflix documentary with Jonah Hill talking about his therapy.
What's up, Studs?
Hi, Jonah. Okay, entertain me.
I'm just gonna start by acknowledging how odd this endeavor is. A patient making a movie about his therapist. But my life has gotten immeasurably better as a result of working with you. If it worked for me, maybe it will work for other people.
How old is Jonah Hill? Because he looks freaking old. How old is this guy? He's 39? He is not 39. Shut up. He looks so old. He's got to shave that beard. Dude, I am... Wait, this picture is not recent. Come on. Come on. He looks so old. He's got to shave that beard.
I haven't watched it, but that Stutz Netflix documentary, which I think is between Jonah and his therapist, shows that Jonah has been doing a good bit of self-work. But if there is this source code, this sort of base layer of low self-esteem, insecurity, sense of insufficiency, it seems like what you're suggesting is there is an upper bound on how much he's going to be able to move that, even with a fantastic therapist, which I guess he'll even feel that. You know, he'll feel the discomfort of, who am I to be this world-famous actor that feels like he's insecure around this girl? So there's an awful lot going on.
It's a crazy-ass thing what they just said, that literally he won't be able to change much because, you know, what the things he's gone through, and so he's kind of like stuck. Even if he does a bunch of therapy, he'll be stuck in a certain state. And on one hand, I get it. It's like if somebody beats you, you know, every week for the first 20 years of your life, and you just get hit. Even if you go through tons of therapy for the next 20 years of your life, and you're then 40, to decondition yourself from getting hit or thinking that somebody's going to hit you when they're, you know, they might not be, etc. You still might think they're going to hit you. Like in your head somewhere, there might be that little tingling of, oh, they could hit me. Can you ever truly get rid of that tingling, like that background noise? I can even see it in myself with different things that I've gone through. It's like, can you really actually get rid of it, or you always have something there? That is a great question. Just on my personal experience, I feel like there's always something there, and you recognize it, that you're having that thought that's putting you in maybe like an old bad routine you had, and you're like, okay, I'm having this thought. You recognize that thought is not good, and then you're like, okay, you move past it because you know, like, hey, this person's not the same, or this situation's not the same. It's not gonna happen, etc. Like, you work through it. I don't know if it ever goes away. So maybe that's where he's going with it, but I feel like they're almost saying you get stuck at the 15-year-old version of yourself, which sounds insane. So we're all just big babies. Well, We're all teenagers walking around in adult bodies, just being like, ah.
Do you think that her reaction is a bit abusive, like exposing it to the public when we know that there's millions of people now judging this person who's already emotionally vulnerable? I would argue that's more abusive. I would argue that when you know somebody's in the public eye and the amount of people that are now going to judge him and the potential effect it's going to have on their career, when it could be resolved between the two of you, do you think that's more abusive and narcissistic?
More abusive and narcissistic. That's a really interesting one. Certainly the timing of it seems strange.
The answer is yes.
Jonah and his new fiance have just had a child. The ex-girlfriend said that she had held this off so that she didn't disrupt the pregnancy. But I mean, the choice is between disrupting a pregnancy or disrupting a newborn. So, like, pick your poison there. I'm not convinced that it's right to air this out in this way. But then on the flip side, is this a useful example for guys who have a low self-esteem to understand that it is important to understand how setting boundaries works? The problem is nobody's having that conversation. Nobody's reading those messages. It's like, oh, I see. I shouldn't lay out my boundaries in this way. This is like clearly wasn't good. Like I should be taking steps to lay this out at the beginning of the relationship. Who was having that conversation? Nobody. All the conversation that is happening around it is like, oh my God, Jonah Hill is so awesome. He laid his boundary out and was like, cool, I'll leave if if you're not down with it, I'm going to leave. If you can't respect my boundaries, go Jonah. Or it's like, go the girl, whatever her name is. Go, Jonah's a shitbag. And yeah, the girl, like, whatever, girl power, I support women or something. Like, it's just that's the conversation you see. I don't know. I think this is the only place where I'm seeing the conversation about, well, actually, what would a healthy relationship be like? Maybe you guys are seeing that conversation out there. I don't know. I've watched several videos on this now, and I have not seen that conversation. The problem that you have is we're working very, very hard to make the ex's motivations for doing this into something that's virtuous. I think, maybe you could say it helps other girls and women to feel like they can leave a relationship where the partner sets unreasonable boundaries. But the point is that these requests...
What are you talking about? Why did she need to air that out 2 years later to get that? It just doesn't make sense. Oh my God. He literally was saying, I will leave if you don't respect my boundaries. I don't know why it's like, his unreasonable boundaries. See what I did, girls. You can also have the power to leave. What? He's literally saying, if you can't respect my boundaries, I'll leave. You could just text back, I can't respect your boundary, I'll leave. I don't know. Okay, maybe it seems easy to me. And it's for other people, it's hard. But it doesn't seem that hard.
Weren't insane. They were maybe overbearing, insecure, and poorly timed, and all of that nuance gets lost. And it's not even the ex's job to have a good idea of how public relations works for some A-list celebrity and to work out every different permutation of the second, third, fourth order effects. So it's just, as with everything, it's super messy. And there's a second set of screenshots that she just put out that came out today, and those include Jonah replying to her saying, using screenshots, or like replying with screenshots and posting screenshots to manipulate me makes me feel like shit. That screenshot is from August 2022. But what people are doing is they're taking that screenshot and presuming he's texted her recently about this most recent. It's not. It's due to her sending back to him his own screenshots in a private message thread. Then there's this other stuff that seems like he was sexting the ex only maybe 6 weeks or a little bit before he maybe got with the new girl, which is now the baby mama and fiance. So it's all just mess.
Wait, is the girl doing this? Is she positioning it in this way to make it look like that? To then like shit all, like to get back at him, to shit all over Jonah and shit all over his new fiance and the kid? Is that what this is? Because the more I hear about it, that's what it sounds like. And this is a funny freeze frame for him. He looks, oh my God, he looks overly happy right now. Okay.
See, there's
But then
misinterpretation.
Can I apologize? Because then maybe I was misinformed because me stupidly thought that they were together recently. I didn't know how badly she timed it. So then in that case, if I now know that she was actually his ex from some time back, she's the abuser.
Oh my God. So she didn't actually know what was going on in sort of the timing. And again, does this not just smell of the internet and the fact that on the internet, we as individuals all have different information being delivered to us from different people, spun in a different way, and it's all like, yes, we're gonna believe this. We saw the clip or we saw the picture, and they cut off 30 minutes of the clip or 30 seconds or whatever, and you got different information than the other person because how they spun it, and it's just like you come out with different conclusions. That's exactly what this seems like. I don't even know what's true about this story. Honestly, I don't even care that much. Like, I'm like, Jonah Hill and this woman, like, whatever. Like, it's not, none of this is abusive. So I'm like, whatever. It would be a different story if he, like, actually did some abusive stuff to her. Then I would be like, well, that's something I care a little bit more about. But that's clearly not what happened. And I think ultimately, this is just tribalism and who do you like better, or whose information did you receive on this topic that has now spun your view in a certain way. God, gotta love the internet, guys. Gotta love the internet.
She's the abuser. And this is why she's the abuser. If you react in the moment, it's a cry for help. If you react a year later, it's a cry for attention. There's a big difference. When you're crying for help, you're genuinely on your knees and you need people to know. And that moment I can understand. A bit like, when you hear footballers' wives expose them for abuse. But when it's a year later, it's so premeditated. And it's such a way of casting a dark shadow on what could be a glorious time for him now. She's definitely the abuser in this relationship.
What would you say to the people that would push back? Sadia, this is... no matter whether it was 1 day after or 1 year after, this is an appropriate opportunity to bring to light poor behavior from a partner in a relationship. This is going to be a landmark event which explains and shows to other women about exactly what is and is not acceptable behavior. And this girl has done a thing which helps the world to see exactly what this sort of guy is like and how this woman has dealt with it.
Why wouldn't she have done that at the beginning? Like when it actually happened, or like within a month afterwards, or something reasonable amount of time, not 2 years later or a year and a half later. Oh my God.
That would be somewhat believable if she aired this or privately to the person that she believes he's now in a relationship with, because then there's no narcissistic reinforcement coming towards her. There is no victim mentality. There is no outcry of public, because narcissistic behavior, they love getting everybody to agree with them. There's none of that. There's no collective.
Narcissistic behavior is when you want to get everybody to agree with you? Oh, shoot. I did not know that. Is that true? That's freaking crazy. Bunch of narcissists up in here.
Mindset, it's purely I want to help, and then you could first start there. If that person's not heeding to your advice and then you go a bit more public over time, I can slightly understand that, but this does not signal that at all. So that's why I just feel like when it's between the two of you, or if it's in the moment, I completely understand. But if it's a year or time later, to expose somebody and degrade somebody is very different to expose your own traumas and trying to seek help. The two things are very, very different, and it sounds like very selfish motives.
Well, guys, I hope you learned something out of this. I think my takeaway is just human psychology. We're all flawed. We all have insecurities and things that come out in weird ways. So being self-conscious about certain things, we try to counteract it by saying, oh, I don't want you to do this, or don't do that. I don't feel comfortable taking my shirt off at the pool because I'm insecure about, somebody seeing my fat belly. I remember being a kid, like a fat kid, and that was the exact thought that I had. Had to wear the t-shirt in the pool because I didn't want somebody to see my fat ass belly. They all see it when you go in the water, dude. They know. They know. It's not like you're hiding anything. They're like, yeah, he's slim. He's got that shirt on. It's all good. They all know. Just take it off. Nobody cares. Well, they might care, but they're just judging you the same way anyways. So just accept it and be like, I don't give a shit. Okay, guys, hope you enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe if you wouldn't mind. And we'll see you again on the next one.